Well, here comes everybody. In 2008, Clay Shirky wrote the book Here Comes Everybody, which talked about how we organize without organizations. We've been seeing this quite a bit over the last 30 years as the World Wide Web has become a little bit more commercially accessible. What Shirky was getting at in the book was how you didn't really need an organization like in the past with structure, titles, and hierarchy to really implement change. We are seeing this play out within politics. Economics are no longer working for the many, but really for the few. And so you're seeing a lot of politicians that are running on a people powered mission. How do we actually do things for people? How are we all part of Team Human? How do we basically make sure that everyone has the ability to get by and not just allow a few to hoard a majority of the wealth? The second area we're seeing this play out is in higher education. We're seeing higher education come apart at the seams. It's not that higher education isn't important. We actually need people to learn critical thinking skills, especially to navigate the ambiguity and vagueness of the 21st century. But we're seeing higher education come undone because it's too expensive. It only benefits, again, the few and not the many. And it has really been wrapped around um, a number of people at higher education organizations that are really administrators and bureaucrats taking up much of the space at these places rather than what higher education should be focused on, which is the university, academia, and the student body. A lot of times I feel like the student body has really been left behind, even though they're paying high tuition at a number of these organizations. The third area we are really seeing Clay Shirky's hypothesis come into play is now in business. Business is in trouble for a number of reasons. One is the corporate model no longer really works. It's cooked. You have a number of people who are very higher up in an organization, many of them who've had tenure at these organizations for a long time. If you look at their careers, they may have been there for 10 or 15 years, staying at these organizations. They're not leaving these organizations. It almost reminds me of looking at Congress and seeing people who are in their 80s still representing the people who have been there for 30 some years in politics. They're treating it as a lifelong job rather than a stay within their career. And this is leading to a lot of outrage because you have a number of these corporate executives that wield power that also lack vision. They lack imagination. They lack an idea of actually where to take their organ. In a lot of ways, I think if we did an audit of many of these organizations, we'd find that they're not really growing at all through innovation. They're basically growing through attrition and laying a number of people off and stock buybacks. And that is leading to a lot of caution, where we are now questioning if these organizations are able to prosper in the 21st century or if the corporate business model as we've known it is over. Now, I hate to be one that ever is going to say anything is dead because I sort of believe in the everything is a remix model, that nothing really dies. It just sort of recycles into new patterns. But the corporate business model really came to fruition in the post World War II economy 80 years ago. And it's now looking like it is cooked or washed because we're sort of reaching that area where those economics don't really work anymore. We are looking more for temporary work. We are looking more for fractional work. So you're going to have more people that are laid off and basically not full time. As a result, this is going to lead to a revolution in terms of the universal healthcare debate. So all of this is tied together into one area. We can't look at just, well, business as usual without looking at healthcare is tethered to your full-time job, at least in the United States. So we have a larger revolution that's happening in these three areas. And the biggest influence we've seen is really in terms of Zohran Mamdani and how he won the recent New York mayoral election. Looking at that, he really used an unorganized structure to win that election. He basically tested Clay Shirky's hypothesis, and it has come true. And we know that what happens in politics just does not stay in politics. It goes into other areas. And I believe that well is going to infect business as we move into 2026. We are going to have a number of people who will continue to leave corporate America, who will start their own business, who will figure out how to organize new models that follow Clay Shirky's recommendations. They don't have the same organizational maps. They don't have the same organizational structures. This is a unique time, and it's one where I think we need to start listening to those voices who are left of center in terms of their thinking, a little more imaginary, a little more questioning in terms of what are the possibilities. I don't think the best business thinking is going to come anymore from MBAs, consultants, or CEOs who've been at these companies for decades, or top executives who've been at these companies for 15, 20 years telling everybody else, well, you have to learn to be agile. And meanwhile, they've never held a job outside of one organization. I'm Jeffrey Colon for Creative Studies.